Hello, everybody, and welcome to Elden Ring. I was just playing some earlier. So this is a serious video. If you don't want serious, click away, please. I want people's actual opinions on things, and even if, like I'm a small channel, I barely have like one subscriber, all that good stuff. I want to know just what regular people think. And I pressed the wrong button. Anyways, in video games, with pronouns and all that stuff, it doesn't matter. Like, let's be honest, pronouns by themselves don't matter. Now, sometimes I think it's more what it represents is what people get mad at, which I can completely agree with. Because it's people like, I don't know, the dude who's currently in charge of the new Obsidian game coming out. What's it called? Avowed? I think. I cannot be sure. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. Um, but no, if you guys know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you don't know what I'm talking about. All right. Um, but no, what I want is what I really want to point out is that he's been accused of a lot of stuff, and there's proof that he is racist and all that stuff, right? Because let's face the facts, racism's definition is, discrimination against a race. You do not like a race. No matter what that race is, it is still racism. All right, I'm sorry for all of those who don't believe you can be racist towards white people or racist towards a specific type of people. All right, you're just wrong. Now, first of all, I've heard a lot of people say it's, oh, because black people have faced racism for years. Y'all do realize that a lot of people have faced racism for years, right? Like just today, I'm not even counting history. Like if we want, we can go there, but we don't want to go there because it's just a worthless conversation. Like, oh great, you were oppressed. So was everybody else. So has everybody else been oppressed. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but did you guys know back in Greek times, um, sexuality wasn't repressed or anything like that, like at all. Like being gay, bi, all that stuff. I believe it's actually common for most people to be bi. And for the Spartans, y'all know them? They were actually known to be the ancient equivalent version of what the Boy Scouts do. Ah, for those who don't get that joke, the Boy Scouts have a lot of allegations against them for hiring pedophiles. So, yeah, but back then, it was just Spartans. There's not much of a difference. Like let's be totally honest here. There's not much of a difference between then and now. Anyways, moving on. What I want is trans people's opinion on, do you want trans marks on like a customizable character? Like actually. Like actually. Because if you're in a fantasy world or anything like that, and I've heard people argue this, why do pronouns matter in a fantasy world and all that stuff? Well, first of all, they matter to you. So why do they matter to you? I can understand in narrative-driven games why pronouns might be important, like he, she, they, them, all that good stuff. Right? I can understand how those might be important in a narrative-driven or a story-driven game. If you have, customizable character choice, which quite a few are gender locked, from what I've seen at least. Um, but no. What I really want to point out is that there is one big problem with the entire conversation. Why? This is just like lore-wise speaking. Let's say in the Harry Potter universe, if any of those characters were trans or anything like that, and I'm not saying any of them are or aren't or anything like that. I'm just saying if they are. There are spells and shit. I'm sure one of them turns you female, or one of them turns you male. You get the idea, right? Like, get the idea? It's fantasy world, magic and shit. So why would top surgery scars be a thing? Unless you're like a muggle. If you're playing a fantasy magic game, like, why would that be? Why would you play a muggle? Or the equivalent of a muggle. And let's say you play a fighter and like D&D and stuff. There's transformation shit. So like, what's up there? First of all, okay, so top surgery scars will never make sense to me in any context. And like, oh, we've put these into the game. I mean, that's ignoring the completely forgot what the study was called, but basically we did a study on what people want their characters to look like. In fact, very few wanted them to look like them. And even when they made them look like them, it was more like what they wanted to be. You know, more like an idealized version of them. So, if you're trans and your ideal form is, you know, being whatever gender, then that's what you're gonna choose. And I feel like the pronouns should be attached to that, just overall, because it's kind of weird to have the choice. And it does bring up some stuff, and I know it can cause arguments and all that stuff online. But that's, honestly, that's just besides the point. No, that's really just my only issue with it. It's like, why would you do that? This is a fantasy world. There are obviously other options. Like, there's probably plenty of other options. Like, actually. And that's ignoring all the research done into it as well. That is ignoring every single little bit of research that has been done put into it. You know? So like, what the fudge, dude? What's going on there? Like, it's just weird. It's just weird as an option, and that is about Dragon Age Veilguard. Like, I'm using Dragon Age Veilguard as the example of like, huh, kind of weird. But that's what I'm using as the example. All right, now, again, the Avowed apparently has pronouns in it, which honestly, I'm not excited for Avowed. The reason I'm not excited for Avowed is honestly, it's just not mostly my type of game, which might sound weird coming from somebody playing Elden Ring. I mean, I like the more difficult games like this, and honestly, I just don't want Avowed. I'd rather get something like Metaphor Refantasio, or however you're supposed to say it, which, you know, is proof that guess what? Politics can be in games, and nobody gives a shit. Right? That's proof of that. Like, actual proof. So it's weird when people say politics don't belong in games to me. Like, that just doesn't make sense. Like, you're wrong, but okay. And I will say, if you're gonna do politics in games, you just have to do it well. Literally, you just have to be good at writing. And that goes for any game at all. If you're doing anything, if you're doing anything in a game, right? No matter what, right? No matter what, if you're gonna do anything in a game, it's got to be well written and have good gameplay. And even then, if it's an indie game, it's just gotta have like good lore, and you'll get a huge amount of fans. Well, I can't say huge. I mean, I can say huge because relatively, like 300 people is still a lot of people, even though in the grand scheme of things, it's really not. Anyways, all of that besides the point. All of that besides the point. I want your guys' actual opinion on that. Like, does it turn you off on games or anything like that? I mean, I'm turned off of Obsidian games because apparently the people in charge, there's been some insiders that came out. I'm off on a lot of companies, a lot of the AAA companies because of that. I don't want to support them. Also, I'm debating on whether or not I want to support From Software anymore, which, because I've heard a lot of rumors. I'm going to look into it more, but I've heard a lot of shit about supposedly Sony's going to try and buy or has already bought From Software, and I'm sad. I'm sad to hear that. I really am. If it's true, I'm gonna be sad about it because Sony sucks. Sony does not make good decisions. Like, at all. In any way, shape, form, or fashion. And my summons are doing bullshit over there. Okay, there they go. But no, I feel like it's important to mention that when companies do something good and do something bad, you know? And Sony has not made good choices in years. Like, first things first, the Infamous series. They should port that to PC. Like, really, dude, what the fuck? That should be ported to PC already. Hell, a lot of their games should be being ported to PC, because that'll bring a whole new audience and get them, literally, they just need to sell some of these games on PC, and it'll get, A, a whole new audience, B, you give it, they make a bunch of money off of it. Like, overall, it is a terrible choice to not sell to PC players. For anybody. Alright? For anybody. Now, I will say, Nintendo, again, it's also a terrible choice for them, but it's Nintendo. I don't expect them to be a good company. I don't expect any company to be a good company. I expect them to put profits first, and so, of course, it makes sense that Nintendo's gonna push the Switch out and stuff like that, because the Switch, honestly, not the best thing in the world, but also, like, it's pretty decent for a handheld console, honestly. I did prefer the DS, though, and I really wish the Switch could play DS games. And that saddens me. That saddens me quite a bit. Um, all of that besides the point. Um, yeah, no, what the fudge is up with people? Like, honestly, life has been wild. Um, like, legitimately, does that matter to people? Like, as if you're a trans person and you're watching this video, I want your actual opinion on it. Like, your honest opinion. Not pushed by the media or anything like that. Like, your actual opinion. Because in my eyes, that's not what they should be focusing on putting in a game. I think this study was called the Prometheus study. I could be entirely wrong about the name, but that's what I believe it was called when it was done, when the studies were done. Or at least that's what they're labeled under. So, yeah, I think it's honestly important to mention that. And you don't want to see yourself in a video game. You want, I mean, of course you want people to relate to, but here's something I'll never understand. Can you only relate to people that look like you? Like, seriously. If you can, then I'm sorry, that's not normal. Because you should be able to relate to anybody, no matter what they look like. People's looks shouldn't matter when you try to relate to somebody. And I think it's a problem if that's what you want to say, that's the reason why you're pushing some of this stuff. Because that shouldn't be the case. At all, in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And if anything, there's been lowering media literacy rates in the United States. For, I didn't really tell you how long. But the media literacy in the US has gone down over time, which I had an argument with a friend a while back, and they're like, oh, because you disagree with me, you have low media literacy. And I'm like, not how that works, because whenever I agreed with them, I'm good, right? Like, I'm on the same level of media process as they are, if I agree with them. But whenever I don't, it's suddenly low media literacy. You're like, oh, everybody I know understands the same. You just have low media literacy. I'm like, A, you know different people than me, first of all. Second of all, I don't have low media literacy. I'm pretty even overall. Like, I'm not, like, the best, but I don't think I all have low media literacy, especially compared to some people. But for them to have said that, it kind of made me mad. You know? And if somebody specific, I actually know they won't remember. Doesn't really matter in the long scheme of things. I'm just petty. That's why I'm bringing it up. But no, the reason I'm actually bringing it up is, I'm bringing it up because I think that kind of shows how everybody thinks now. That, hey, because, because we disagree, you're just wrong no matter what. Rather than agree to disagree, which I did actually try to do with my friend. But they wouldn't accept that. And I've tried that multiple times in arguments with them, and they don't like that. Even though I throw their own words against them, and like, oh, I never said that. It's, it be what it be. Life be what it be. They're my friends, so we're perfectly fine. But no, I'm mostly pointing this out because I feel like that's a major problem in the United States with the low media literacy. And I've seen a lot of people point this out. Politics here in the US is just vote for your team, and that's it. And I've seen a lot of people say, oh, old white men aren't the people, or shouldn't be in charge of the country. And yeah, I can agree somewhat. Like, hey, old people shouldn't be in charge of the country. If you can't control your own body, I don't think you should be in charge of a country. Okay, I think that is a reasonable enough thing to say. Okay, I feel like that's a reasonable enough thing to say. And if you can't control your own body, you probably shouldn't be in control of a national superpower. Or a worldwide superpower, or whatever the fuck the US is at this point. I think the best way I've ever heard the US described is a bunch of third world countries banding together and just create with a military budget that could fight God. That's just it. I feel like that's the only thing I can say about the United States when I live here. But no. Back into topic. I want people's actual opinions on this stuff. Okay? Like actual opinions, not oh, should be this way because of political reasons. No, I want to know your actual thoughts. Because I feel like we don't get that much. Honestly. I feel like you're told you want this in a game by game developers, right? Or you're told you want this by the government. Do you actually want that? Or is it just you're doing what the government wants you to? Or you're doing what the game wants you to? Or you're pushing these political opinions because that's what people want you to do? And I feel like that's a serious question some people have to ask themselves. And I mean this when it comes to every political opinion and such. Do you actually believe this, or do you believe it because that's what you've been told by others? And I do try to ask myself that whenever I can. Like, oh, hey, do I believe this just because it's being pushed, or do I believe this because, there's evidence behind it? And people can determine what they want as evidence and all that stuff. Although I do want to say we should definitely bring back being able to agree to disagree. And I saw Asmongold's opinion about something the other day. And I can't remember everything about it, but I do remember him saying that um, Democrats have, for all intents and purposes, shamed anybody that doesn't agree with them, right? And that's how it's been on media, and media's been, constantly repressed and all this stuff. That's why when, say, Twitter and all these other places get not as moderated, they turn into absolute fucking cesspools. Eventually, over time, that it's no longer going to be accessible. But if you suppress people for long enough, they explode. And whenever they do get that freedom, they use it, to do the absolute worst stuff. They don't care what you think. And I don't think it's okay to say that. Like, I don't know if you guys know about flat earthers, but one of the reasons why some flat earthers are flat earthers is because whenever they asked, oh, hey, why is the earth not flat? They would get laughed at and mocked. And of course, I'm gonna do that to some flat earthers who, see all this evidence and then just go, nah. Like, I do believe some of them do deserve that, but not all of them. Like, I used to have a friend who believed the earth was flat, but it's just because it had never been well explained to him. And I explained it to him in a way that he understood. And he got it. He's like, oh, shit, that makes sense. And I wouldn't have made fun of him if that was just it. Of course, I'm no longer friends with that dude because he was racist. Um, but, you know, that's an entirely different matter. Um, but no, once I explained it to him, he understood it. And, kudos to him to being able to be like, oh shit, maybe I'm wrong about this. Of course, it's not like that anymore, but, it'd be what it be. I'm not friends with him anymore, so I don't know how he's doing or anything like that recently. At least last I talked to him, he was fucking racist and all this other stuff. But I have two trans friends. One of them didn't vote in the election. The other, I don't know if they could vote in the election. I don't know how old. I don't remember how old they are. I think they could vote. I swear they could vote. I swear they did vote. I might just be going insane. Anyways, no, they vote for Kamala, right? That is what they said they do. Okay. So, when I told them, hey, I have two friends, both part of the LGBTQ, that didn't vote for Kamala, they voted for Trump. They're like, that doesn't make sense. And then I proceeded to tell them part of the reason why, a while ago, some news reporters actually looked into something along those lines, right? And it was, they talked to, like, a dude at a mechanic shop and something like that, and one of the reasons the dude said he voted for Trump is, A, Democrats have blamed men, or specifically white men, for a lot of things for quite a few years now, and, automatically that's excluding part of who you should get voting for you, yeah, it kind of sucks that they did that, but no, their choice. It's how they ran their campaign. And then, dude, they had a DEI white dude hire, and I find that absolutely fucking hilarious. Like, actually. The first ever white DEI hire. Like, absolutely hilarious to think about. Great fun to be like, dude, you were a DEI hire. That's absolutely fucking hilarious. Like a white DEI hire is just unheard of, you know? It is absolutely unheard of. But it's absolutely hilarious to think about. Um, no, seriously though. Like I feel like it's important to point out, you know, hey, some of this shit doesn't make sense. And DEI doesn't make any sense. Like actually. Because think about it. DEI is supposed to be getting the oppressed into these important jobs or whatever, right? Why are they for video games? And that's ignoring all of the DEI companies that were just absolutely just using DEI as a cover to abuse people, which has happened way too often. Like, did you guys know the creators of not Concord? It was something else, Dustborn or something? Yeah, did you guys know that their parent company's CEO is like released, you know, private pictures online of a child? Yeah. Last I checked, he was still CEO. So, yeah. Yeah. For all those being like, oh shit, what the fuck? Yeah. That's how I feel. You know, some of this shit's wild. It doesn't make sense. I don't think I needed to drink that twice. Anyways, nah. Just weird to think about. DI just literally can't work because no matter what, an oppressed gender, sex, race, whatever, that's gonna change over time. Like, actually, we've seen it happen throughout history. That oppression has swapped, the oppressors have always swapped, and the oppressed have always changed. Like, really? Y'all are just stupid if you think it's not gonna swap. Like, over time. I mean, not to mention, I don't know if y'all realize this, but slavery is just a trap for economy. Well, in the short term, it boosts it. In the long term, whenever a slave rebellion happens or anything like that, you lose out on billions of manpower and all this other stuff, billions of product, all this other stuff. You lose on the product that the slaves are making. So slaves can never work. Like, in a long-term society, slaves can't work. The only way to make a slave would be if they to make it to where slavery would work, and even then that's iffy because, if you give people encouragement to work for you, it actually works better. I mean, they just do better work over time and all that good stuff. Anyways, um, no, some of this stuff just does not make sense. It doesn't add up. Like, white people have oppressed. Hell, white people are oppressed in some places. Like, really sorry to ruin some people's views of the world, but like, yeah, white people aren't the end all be all of every single race and fucking place there is. Like, sorry to, sorry to view in your view. Not really sorry. Not at all sorry, but just, pointing out that y'all don't know much about the world if you think that's how it is everywhere. I mean, there are quite a few countries where being white is just not normal. So you get funny looks and all this other stuff, which, I mean, is actually worse than it is in some places here, because it's countrywide rather than like specific county or something like that. And don't get me wrong, there are racists everywhere. There are sexists everywhere, you know, but that doesn't make them the majority. Anyways, no, I've had this argument with my mother a few times when I pointed out, hey, you know, sexism isn't the majority of what happens. And she's like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I'm like, no, it's not. Because if sexism was the end all be all, right? Why would companies not hire mostly women? Because then they could pay cheaper, which, sure, they might cover it up by hiring men, but there would still be an overwhelming amount of women in a company that make less than those said men working in the same positions and all that other stuff. Don't get me wrong, there are places that are like that, but there's also places that are the exact opposite, where men make less and all that good stuff. And, yeah, yeah, hell, there are actually quite a few places where women get paid more than men, but it doesn't, the gender wage gap doesn't support that. So a lot of people ignore it. See, that's something little funny. Little funny to think about. You know? Uh, there's some places where men, on average, actually, men get paid less, you know, overall, but men, make up more of the overtime and stuff in those same jobs. So, yeah, there's been studies done about it. It's really weird to look at. It really is. Like, honestly, it's weird stuff. But also, I think it's important to know some of that. I do think it is important to point some of that stuff out because it's like, oh hey, technically speaking, the gender wage gap is reversed than what it actually is called to be. Because guess what? Resources and the studies actually show differently. Weird. And yeah, men, you know, make less per payment, but they get more overall because of, working more overtime and harsher jobs. And that's just as a gender. That's not talking about actual, like, what they make in the job, like what the actual job is. Because like you've gotta point out that they're, in this when they talk about a gender wage gap, hey, you're bringing up, billionaires into this, which just aren't the common people or anything like that. But those are the people that are going to be brought up in a study like that. They're billionaires. They're men that make a lot of money. And I'm sure is there a women billionaire? I don't know. I could not tell you because I have no idea. But, you hear more about men millionaires and all that stuff. And yeah, they aren't wrong. And hell, if you want something that even proves that the wage gap is actually getting more in favor of the women, a lot of men aren't working jobs anymore. I mean, here in the United States, at least, the job economy absolutely fucking sucks. A lot of places refuse to hire people. It's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, actually, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but there's a lot of men that, originally they slipped through the cracks. They didn't draw any attention to themselves or anything like that. But college educated and all this stuff, men are not going and getting jobs and stuff. Because A, they can't, and B, it's just, you know, the American dream is working one job, coming home to your wife or your family or your husband or whatever, and being able to support them on one income. That's not possible anymore. And, it sucks. That honestly, honestly sucks. I really wish that wasn't true, but it is true. And, well, that's life for you. But a lot of men have not been getting jobs or anything like that because of depression and the male loneliness epidemic, which a lot of people refuse to take seriously. If you want good videos on it, go look at Chew on Head. She's an amazing content creator, and I'll always say she is because honestly, she is. Like, she looks into this stuff really well, and I'm glad to say that I'm been a subscriber of hers for more than longer than I should have been. Um, but no, I feel like it's important to point out, hey, there's all these reasons that men are actually dropping out of work, so that wage gap that supposedly exists really doesn't. And I feel like that's important to point out. Like, oh, hey, it's all men, all men. No, it's really not. And yeah, well, that can suck to hear for some because that's what they make their personality. And I do not think that should be anybody's personality. Um, People who act like it is, hating men is an actual thing people act like. Why are you not disappearing? There you go. There are people who act like their only personality trait is I hate men. And that's not a personality. It's just not. It's it's not at all a good personality trait. It's hell, it shouldn't be a personality trait. Like in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Like actually, and there's some people who treat it like it is. And anyways, but no, gender wage gap is, yeah, it's been debunked quite a few times. That basically saying, hey, I don't exist. But a lot of women, a lot of just people in general refuse to believe that. Which, you can refuse to believe it all you want, but that doesn't make it less true. Like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but just because you say, oh, hey, I don't believe you, doesn't make it any less true. You know, shutting your ears or covering your ears and saying, la, 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 I can't hear you. Or, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. It doesn't, stop the truth. And there's a YouTuber I saw put this the best way. Um, it is easier to blame another than it is to look at yourself for something. And that just goes for most people. Now, I will say, there are people that aren't like that. There's quite a few people that aren't like that. But at the same time, because the world is the way it is, you're encouraged not to do that. You're encouraged to blame another person for some of your mistakes. And look, I sometimes do that. But when I calm down, I do try to be like, hey, look, this is my fault. I should take care of this. My fault this happened. And then other times it just isn't. Like, for instance, um, I used to be friends with somebody who eventually ended up dating another one of my friends. Now, that friend was bi. That friend of mine was bi. Like, full on, attracted both men, women, all that good stuff. All right. Um, he started dating her, and she abused him. Like, to the point to where he refuses to ever date a woman again. Now, he doesn't hate all women or anything like that. He just refuses to date one anymore. He refuses to get in any sort of relationship with them. Due to, getting abused so badly by one. And I'm sorry, I'm like laughing, chuckling at this. It's just, I've got to let out the emotion somehow because I knew both of these people. They were both my friends at one point or another. And yeah, it be what it be. But she abused him to a point to where I don't think he'll ever be the same. And that sucks. Honestly, that hurts to see. Now, he's in a happy, loving relationship now, thankfully. Him and his boyfriend are doing perfectly fine as well, which I'm thankful for as well. I think it's important to point that out, because he's doing better. He's doing a lot better. But, you know, a lot of women will say, oh, women can't be abusers. Women can't abuse you. You're lying. And that actually happened during the Me Too movement, when men came out against women. And when a man talked about his experience during the Me Too movement, he got, you know, buried, literally. You know, the Me Too movement was actually racist. Bet y'all didn't know that one. Yeah, the Me Too movement was actually racist because, see, it was originally started by a black woman. Yet nobody listened to her. Yet the first time a white actress, used the hashtag Me Too, it actually begun. And yeah, overall, it was a good movement. I think it was a movement that was needed because sexual harassment and all that stuff is rampant in workplaces, or was rampant in workplaces at the time. And yeah, that's not good at all. But I feel it's important to point that out. Plus, it did have some long-term negatives, because there were men that were brought up who were falsely accused in the Me Too movement. There's been a lot of men who have been falsely accused and all this stuff. In fact, there's been quite a few articles talking about men whose lives have been ruined by false accusations. One of them, Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. Amber Heard lied. Like that, it was just, she lied. Johnny Depp wasn't abusive to her. At least nowhere near physically. At least nowhere near physically. And yeah, she physically abused him. And we'll never know everything that happened in that relationship, because most of it's between them. And I think that that's a good thing. But it was proven through court of law that Johnny Depp was innocent. Yet, before, everybody immediately jumped Johnny Depp. Immediately. There was no hesitation. There was no nothing. Everybody immediately thought Amber Heard was abused by Johnny Depp. My mom was one of them, and I always said, hey, look, maybe he was abusive, but I don't think he was the only abusive one in that relationship before the trial started. That is what I had said. And honestly, do I believe they fought a few times verbally between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp? Yeah, I'm sure. All couples have their arguments. But do I believe he was actually abusive? No, I don't think I ever will. But no, that's just one example. Another is one of the famous football meme dudes got falsely accused by his ex-girlfriend. Turns out he just got, he was proven innocent. Recently. Recently he was proven innocent. And it's like, there are women that lie about this stuff, and that's why it does have to be scrutinized. The Katie Bree and George Not Found situation. It was a lie. It was a lie. Okay? She lied. She purposefully made the situation not what it was. She purposefully misconstrued it. I feel like that's a very important thing to point out. She went out of her way to misconstrue the situation. And so that's what she did. She misconstrued the entire situation and did her best to make sure everybody thought George was guilty. Now, Tectone has recently been accused, which I don't watch Tectone. I never have. But I did see his defense against it, and honestly, I think that situation is iffy. I do think, I'm not going to watch Tectone. I'm never going to support him. But if he was falsely accused, I mean, either way, this should be investigated. I don't even think it should have been brought to the internet. I think it should have just been, immediately to the cops if this is what happened. And some of this stuff in that situation is just like wild wording and shit. Like, actually. So, that's besides the point. Okay? That is besides the point. Um, but his response to the situation, I think, kind of makes me lean towards he's not the one lying, or at least he's innocent in this situation. And that's only one situation. I know he's been accused multiple times, which can be, proof that somebody is actually abusive, Um, I know that can be used as evidence, they have multiple accusers. But at the same time, I think it's important to point out that he's in court for one, last I had heard, and the other one I don't know anything about, so I can't tell you anything about. So, yeah. But no, overall, I think the situation's leaning at least a little bit in his favor because of just how the situation is. Feel like, yeah, I'm not gonna call it a false accusation or anything like that until we actually have, solid evidence that it is. So until then, I'm not gonna say anything. But if it is a false accusation, I'm not necessarily gonna be surprised. Anyways, all of that aside, yeah, it's just, one of my friends worded it best. There is sexism on both sides. And it's not like a patriarchy thing. It's not a matriarchy thing. It's neither. And don't get me wrong, you can make a case somewhat for there being a patriarchy in the world, but also you kind of also gotta, I feel it important to point out that, like, oh, it's not necessarily the Senate that's actually making those decisions. It's more like, I don't know, just possibly, I'm not saying anything here. I'm not pointing fingers or anything. It might possibly be the companies that back those Senate members, or that those Senate members gamble on, and such. But anyways, anyways, ahem, ahem, ahem. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. You know why I'm coughing. Please, use some of your brains. It ain't conspiracy theory shit. You guys know that Visa, the MasterCard and shit, that stuff actually has a habit of trying to interfere with people's, laws and regulations in countries and platforms as well. Like, for instance, you know they're trying to make it to where Japan has to self-censor inside of their own country? Ain't that funny? Ain't that a little goofy thing, huh? Ain't that goofy? It's just a little bit goofy. You know, ain't just a little bit goofy. Yes, I'm pointing something out. I'm saying this in a specific way to get people to notice something. You know? That's why I'm saying it like this. That's why I'm saying things in the order I'm saying them right now. Anyways, I'm not pointing fingers or making allegations or anything like that. I would never. I would never. Me? Nah. Nah. I'm not the type of person to do that. Not even a little bit. Anyways, you'll know that Visa likes censoring everything that, like, really weird censorship, like you can't even show hand holding type stuff. And they do straight up just mean hand holding. Like, actually. Some of that content's been banned off of platforms because it's hand holding. And Visa said no. Weird, huh? Weird that a place with a lot of money likes doing a specific thing that, you know, likes suppressing things. Just saying. I'm just talking, guys. I'm just talking. You know, I'm just talking. Anyways, this is a serious video. I want people's actual opinions on these topics. Seriously, go down below and comment and, like, tell me what your opinion is. I'd love to hear it. Like, actually. I feel that it's important to hear everybody's side of the argument and everybody's opinions on shit because, you know, while I don't... Jesus Christ. While well, some people might think that I don't want diversity in games and stuff like that. I want different opinions and different genres and stuff like that because that's what makes things better. You know, that's, you know, you have to have a diverse you need actually differentiating opinions to change and be better. And that goes for both sides of the political spectrum. You need an opposite. You need to see the opposite opinion, and I don't think the opposite opinion should be repressed. I mean, I think some people's opinions should be repressed, and, you know, pedophiles. I don't think we should listen to their opinion on things. After all, they did just a while ago try to join the LGBTQ. Don't know if you guys saw that. That happened. That was a thing. Yeah, kill me now. Anyways, this is me signing out and signing off because I just wanted to record while talking and just I wanted to record more often now since I got my OBS fixed. I'm gonna do that. So more content, specifically Elden Ring, because I can. So goodbye, because it's definitely not all the only thing I can record. Nope, not at all. All right. Have a nice time, guys. And to whoever watches this video, please go outside. touch some grass, go see the sun. It's proven to help your mentality. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to play Elden Ring because I'm an unhealthy bastard. But you don't have to be. All right, goodbye.